now is kind of open it up for any questions that anybody might have. We can talk about the book, we can talk a little bit about the writing life, talk about my dragon collection, whatever you'd like to talk about.
I'm curious about, you said you started researching the pictures of Ireland. Did you go?
I did go.
Before you started?
I researched for probably about a year and a half, close to 2 years, and I decided, you know what, I can tell the story, even though it's a fantasy, but I wouldn't be sure if the real places that are in the book, if I was telling it accurately enough. So in May of 2011, I went, and I traveled across the pond, stopped off in Dublin for a couple of days, rented a car, drove on the wrong side of the road, all that good stuff, and drove around.
I'm seeing the Barna Woods in Galway. That's where I'm seeing it placed when you're reading. I'm wondering if you went to the Barna Woods.
I went to quite a few places. I didn't go there, but I'm going again in July, so I'll make sure that I go.
Some dragons in Barna Woods.
I've heard them.
You've heard them, yes. I traveled all around. I started off in Dublin. I went down into County Waterford, County Cork, all the way up to Limerick, into County Clare, Sligo, Mayo, cut across to Newgrange, everywhere where I had major scenes in the book. I traveled to. The only place I didn't get to that I really wanted to get to was into Northern Ireland. But I was there for 2 weeks, and I had an agenda, and I had a wonderful time. The folks that I met were wonderful. As soon as I picked up the car, it started raining. It rained for the whole 10 days I had the rental car. But it was wonderful. I had a wonderful time.
Did you lose a hubcap?
Didn't lose a hubcap. Didn't
We lost the hubcap in Scotland.
I didn't lose any mirrors. Although I have to say that the price of the rental car for 10 days was this amount, and the price of the insurance was twice the amount of the rental car. But really, the dragons have been embedded in me since I was, I'm going to say 6 or 7, roughly. And I don't know, to me, I can almost hear them.
Yeah, so they already had personality.
They already had personalities. My dragons came into my head fully formed with their individual personalities. My characters, for the most part, did, although they did wander a little bit. I had to rein them in every once in a while. The interesting character, the most interesting one for me to write was my Grayson character, the Drake. Really, I brought him in as a plot device to bring in and introduce my 2 protagonists in the story to the Dragon Clan. And then my protagonists have some special abilities, and I use the Drake, the wingless dragon here, to bring them into the clan so that the clan would not think that these were the pillars.
Just thinking that.
And Grayson kind of stole the show after that. And everyone that I've had read the book has said that Grayson's like one of their favorite characters of all time. So, kind of stole everyone's heart.
What do you think about him appealing to people so much?
I think he was, because in the book he's being mistreated, and he's freshly hatched out of the egg, and he's being mistreated, and I think he appeals to that as the underdog. You want to see him turn into something that's really important for him. He's very vulnerable. He's a very vulnerable character in the book. So you want to look at
A wingless dragon, was a wingless dragon what is it about? What makes a wingless dragon?
He was born without wings. There are wingless dragons. They roam around. Some say the Loch Ness Monster might be part of that family. Grayson, I haven't decided if the magic in him will allow him to grow wings, but I have other more important things for Grayson. He doesn't need to necessarily fly around Ireland to protect Ireland. He has other skills that are going to come out. some start to come out in book one, but more will come out in book two.
I'd like to say how much I enjoyed your book. It was well crafted, and I don't read fantasy. I think the last fantasy I read before your book was Chronicles of Narnia for children, and I was caught up in the magic and loved your characters and the way you played out your characters. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that. I'm not a fantasy reader either, but it just flowed and you just believe.
I am a fantasy reader and I loved it. I've read all the Hearn books by Anne McCaffrey, and I thought Deborah's book was wonderful. I really, really enjoyed it so much. So
I always felt that if Anne wanted to write a book that was not set in Perm, and she wanted her dragons to originate from anywhere, she wanted to originate from Ireland, because she lived until she died a couple of years ago.
It's interesting, that term fantasy. I think if people who lived in the past were to come here today or to read about how we live today, they would think they're reading fantasy.
Right.
And in many respects, as I read things that are described as fantasy, I just see, a different world I haven't discovered yet or hasn't been developed yet, And then I come to San Francisco every once in a while, and I'm in fantasy. So yeah, fantasy is kind of a misnomer sometimes.
It is. I mean, the book does have dragons, it does have magic in it, but really the story is about family. At the crux of this story, the story is about family. The story is about Christian, who grew up in an orphanage, never knew his parents, and had these visions of really terrible, bad things. And he wondered, could he be a killer? And he runs into an American woman, Devin, who is there to search out for her heritage. She has come into possession of a pendant, and she's looking to find out what that is all about based on her heritage. And her pendant matches a ring. I'm sorry, she has a ring. Christian has a pendant that matches that ring. And together they try and solve the murder of these visions that Christians have. And they finally run into dragons. But it really is all about family. It's about the loss of family, renewal of family, the various types of family. Anything else? Any other questions? I really want, sorry.
What would you say has been your greatest challenge in taking the 4 years to write this novel? There's the research, there's the discipline, there's all kinds of aspects to it. But what has been your greatest challenge in creating this novel?
I would say for me, it's getting the story the best that I could have made it. I'm taking magical beings and magic, and I'm interweaving it with Celtic mythology and real places, and I wanted to make sure that when somebody reads this book, that besides the enjoyment factor of the book, that they may learn something that may pique their interest enough to go and visit a couple of these places. So to me, the challenge was to interweave the fantasy with reality of these places and the culture, some of the language in it, and then just being able to tell the story as best as I possibly could, which is why we do so many edits and things like that. You work with an editor, and you work with your critique group and your beta readers and all of that, because I want to make sure I don't confuse anybody, but I want to draw them in so that they'll learn something.
Exactly how much beer and whiskey was involved in the process?
Well, let's see, 4.5 years, how many days is that? Yes, I do have an affinity for the Guinness. also for some whiskey, and when I was in Ireland and Scotland, I was lucky enough to do some tasting of multiple whiskeys and many Guinness, and all the pubs, even some other
Such a task.
beers. Yes, yes, it was a hardship. You know what? Somebody had to do it, and I guess I'll volunteer.
Deborah, you made some of the meals look really good too in the book. Were there things that you actually did eat?
Yes.
So I was just like, I don't get stew. I mean, you made so.
Yes, yes. I have a few scenes where I'm describing some food, and one of my characters is always eating.
Yeah.
And even though I lost weight on the trip because I walked around so much, I ate a ton of really good food and drank some wonderful Guinness, and I tried the Guinness in every town I went to because it's kind of a little running joke that they say, oh, Guinness here is wonderful, but try the Guinness here. Try the Guinness here. It pretty much all tasted really good to me, so.
Was there a difference between Guinness you get here in America?
Yes, there is. Yeah, there is. Yeah, it's fresh out of the St. James Gate Brewery right there in Dublin, and yeah, it must be coming out of the living. Coming